Yo, what up, guys? We're on the clock. I am back for another episode of the War Room. And as always, I have a special guest, very extraterrestrial, intellectual as always. I got my boy, EasyMoneyKev. That's what I'm going to use to introduce you all the time. Just, I feel like it describes like your Twitter as a whole. Like 90% of the stuff you say is just like stuff I'll be honest to God myself at certain points in the day. It's just like Kev's on a
Oh man,
Kev's on a different wavelength right now.
all the time. No, I'm glad to be back, man. I appreciate you for having me. Last one was fun. This one should be even better. It's an
Yeah,
honor and a privilege for real.
bro. I mean, I don't know if it's just because I had a good time talking just the general college hoops, but I picked like probably my favorite group of prospects that I've done in these four past episodes. And I mean, just in general, I think we have my four favorite prospects in the entire draft class on this episode. So I'm really pumped. But it would be kind of like I was talking about the beginning of the show with you before we started. It's hard to talk about anything in basketball right now without kind of just brushing up on LeBron passing Kareem all time scoring, and then also we have trade deadline stuff. So were you able to watch LeBron the fadeaway jumper at the end of the third quarter?
Of course, man. I'm from out here. I'm from Inglewood. I grew up a Laker fan. I won't lie, I'm a Heat fan now, but I still deep down root for the Lakers.
Yeah.
So it was good to see that happen. LeBron, he's been the chosen one. They dubbed him the chosen one when he was like what 17, 18. He's been doing it for a long, long time, obviously, and Laker fans, even in the down year, still get spoiled. But shout out to LeBron. He's one of the greatest we've ever seen. Clearly, I don't care where you have him. He's still one of the greatest ever. Um, Tough buckets to do it. Of course they lost, but nobody's gonna remember that. A lot of people when they seen Kareem take it from Wilt didn't think it would ever happen. Didn't think anybody would ever get to the record. And here Bron is, and he's still going too. That's the craziest part. Like we don't know where he's gonna finish.
Gonna probably
That's
at
the
around 40,000. I think he's gonna probably have like 40 and a half. I think that's my prediction.
and that's insane. And of course we all know like Bron, he can score clearly, but he's not like a scorer first. He's not a guy that's every night. Oh, I'm about to go drop 30. Like no, that's not his game. So
Yeah, I mean when
I respect him, man.
just like Twitter, I mean when Bronny and Bryce are gonna get there, I mean those guys are gonna want their shots, right? So he can't
Yeah,
keep going forever. So
yeah, exactly, man. So
good
just
job for them.
salute LeBron, man. He's different. We ain't never really seen nothing like him, if we be honest.
Yeah, he's quite the character. I don't know how I feel about how emotional he's been lately on television. Just seems like every other night I'm watching LeBron cry on TNT. But I mean, it's just like it's obviously a big deal. I mean, you touched on really everything that's important. You have to recognize him as an all-time great, not only in basketball, just in sports period. You know, I was a Dwayne Wade guy growing up, so I admired LeBron as kind of like a Batman to the Robin of Dwayne Wade, but I don't know. I was also a Kareem is the GOAT of basketball guy, and I still always have been, just like across like pure dominance. Vince Carter was talking about last night. Like Kareem scored 38,000 points on 4,000 less points off free throws than LeBron, and only had one 3-pointer in his entire career. So
Crazy.
I'll always kind of have respect for that. The guy also like didn't lose a game for like 3 years, like at a level of like basketball in Division 1, college. Like he literally went on just a 3-year tear. And I don't know. I kind of weigh still college basketball when I'm kind of talking about just like go basketball, but um, LeBron's definitely up there. I think he's probably the best like pure athlete we've seen. And sports maybe. I don't know. There's definitely a conversation there. Like Bo Jackson's up there, but there's a lot of crazy other athletes of basketball, like Mike and Shaq, but he's up there for sure. So you got to give him his props when you can. And I mean, speaking of you know kind of the Lakers and further into LeBron, but it's always buzzing around any team LeBron's on during the trade deadline because it always seems like there's moves to make. The latest news is though that D'Angelo Russell may be making a return to Lala. What do you think?
Oh man, I'm not. I like it. It's crazy because I actually love D'Angelo Russell at Ohio State. Like he's one of my favorite college basketball players of all time. But he's a good pro. I just I feel like it's the reason that Minnesota's trying to get rid of him because he just doesn't really. He's meshed well and he's been shooting the ball. Hmm.
They need the ball in Ant's hands more often. I mean, I think that that's the
Simple.
biggest thing. And
Mhm.
I mean, the touches that D'Angelo Russell is getting are not like high percentage catch and shoot touches. They're taking up shot clock. They're, isolating. I think the Lakers definitely need more of that than the Timberwolves do. Um, you know,
Exactly.
I think
Yep.
the
And
best version of the Timberwolves is, spreading it out more, getting up and down as much as they can with Rudy at the 5. And they already are so big and so limited in some of the stuff they can do offense. They don't need a ball stopper. You know what I mean? Like that scores in the mid.
exactly.
So
Exactly. So yeah.
yeah, it's a
I think going back to LA is probably it's probably the best for him for real. Cause like you said, he's what they need. Russ ain't worked out. It is what it is, and they need somebody else to kind of take that pressure off Bron.
Russ, I guess, goes to Utah and they buy him out. Malik Beasley and Jared Vanderbilt, I guess, are rumored in that deal as well. I don't know where exactly they're going and where their futures are, but I don't know. It'd be interesting to see, you know, any of those guys end up on the Lakers. I mean, even just one of them. I think Malik Beasley. I don't know. If I'm the Lakers, I would rather have a Vanderbilt. I think Vanderbilt's more what they need right now. Like just some
Same.
yeah. I don't know. He's definitely an upgrade over Gabriel winning Gabriel. Like it'd be a bit of an upgrade. But yeah, what did you think of the Kyrie trade? I guess that's another like major news point.
I mean, I feel like if you're Dallas, you had to do it because
I love it for
Luca. I
Dallas.
feel like yeah, I think Luca's probably been begging for some help because I know he's probably a little bit gassed out because he literally carries that entire franchise for the past 4 years he's been there. Um, and Kyrie is one of the best isolation scorers we've ever seen. So Luca can literally give the ball up and be worryless that someone else can go get a bucket for him, and he doesn't have to do too much work and make the play happen for other guys. So I love for them. I'm concerned about Kevin Durant, man. I don't know what's gonna happen in Brooklyn. But for Dallas, I can't wait to watch it. To be honest, I'm gonna go watch them next month. They come back to Staples Center when they play the Lakers, so I'm gonna go see it with my own 2 eyes because I just got to see it. Those are two of my favorite players right now, and I like it. Jason Kidd, it's a lot of pressure on him now, but they're gonna have to make it work. I'm not expecting big things in year one, but I mean, it's not even guaranteed he comes back next year too. That's the crazy part, but we'll see what happens for the rest of the season. It should be entertaining.
Yeah, I like him as a mentor for Jaden Hardy, even if it's only for the year, especially after seeing the performance that he had the other night. Hardy was in my 20s, so it was good to see him kind of get some mentorship of a player who, I mean, kind of fits the mold of what they could be looking to develop him into, even if they're just getting the Kyrie rental. I mean, we're looking at Cam Thomas, the steps he's made on I mean, he was playing under
Hmm.
Kyrie. I think that there's he may not be the most like loved player, especially right now in like the media space. And I think he made some very valid points in his press conference, kind of just about, how narratives in basketball are honestly just whack. Like the media is whack and it's just been whack. And especially the treatment of players and when they want to exercise their opinions, it's like, you can either just take the guy for as a hooper, or I mean, you can criticize all the stuff off the court, but all that matters is put the ball in the basket. And when there's one thing that Dallas needs right now, like I said, Luka is gassed, and he's really had them on his like the entire offensive load on his back for like the last year and a half. So getting a player in there like Kyrie who can really just give you know like 18 touches to a game, like 18 possessions where he's going to end with the ball in his hands, and maybe he's either isolating or he's going into a pick and roll as the initiator. So that's definitely a lot helpful. So Luka doesn't need like his usage was getting up to like 40 at some point early in the year. Unreal,
Crazy.
like Westbrook, like MVP triple double, like passing,
Hmm.
bricking like free throws to get rebounds or layups to get rebounds and shit. That was so fun. I'll never forget that. But kind of yeah, I don't know. I like it also for the Nets. I feel like it's a good deal low key for the Nets. They get Finney Smith and they also get and they
Dinwiddie.
get I'm blank Dinwiddie back. And and
Yep.
Dinwiddie played really well with them. He was a borderline all-star last time he suited up in a Nets uniform. So um it should be interesting to see. I think the Nets got a lot deeper, and like you talked about, I don't know if they're gonna move Durant. I don't know if they need to. I think the pitch can be to Katie like, hey, we got you like probably one of the deep. I think they're probably top 10 like in depth. You know what I mean? In terms of like rotation players that can play like 15 minutes a game in like a second round playoff series. And I think if I'm either of these teams, both of them just need a backup center. And Andre Drummond looks like a very viable option for a lot of teams, especially after the way he played the other night for the Bulls. So the rest of the dive were interesting. Is there anybody else you want to see get moved before we kind of get into the draft conversation?
Another center, Jakob Pertl, man. Especially for my Miami Heat, we desperately need a backup big to take some of that pressure off of Bam. I would love to see. He's been so good for a long time now. I just think he's so serviceable, mobile, good hands, great defender in my opinion. Or if he's not a great defender, he's a really good defender. I want to see him get moved. You mentioned Jared Vanderbilt too. I definitely want to see him get moved because in a different situation. I mean, he's been good this year for Utah, but I think other teams can maximize his skill set right now and
Miami,
compete with him at a high level in the postseason.
Miami would be a good spot for him.
Trust me.
Him, or if you guys got Crowder from, I mean, I'm a Suns fan, so I'm gonna say from us. Like, if you got Crowder from us, I think that'd be a good pickup. With the Suns, I just hope that we get rid of Shamit and we get some sort of different option coming off the bench at guard. Like, I heard us kind of rumored in a lot with the Raptors players, not Siakam, but with Anunoby and Van Vliet. I don't know. I don't know how either of that makes me feel. And I just don't know how to feel about our roster as a whole, man. We just are such a different team every single night. It's Book's back though. I do want to. I haven't gotten to talk about it on here, and then we'll actually get moved on. Booker, in my opinion, is like one of the biggest All-Star snubs in like the history of like the All-Star game. Could you like tell me a player of the month that didn't get elected to the All-Star game? Like, I don't know.
I
I don't
can't.
know how many there are, and especially when he played more minutes than Jaren Jackson Jr. and Zion Williamson this year, to the point when they put out the starters. I don't know. I just felt like that was crazy. I thought he was a snub for the starters, and then he didn't even get picked at all. I was like, oh my gosh. But all right. Anyway, Cam Whitmore, freshman forward for Villanova. I'll kind of give like the stat background here. He's only played 16 games, had the injury to start the year with his wrist. And since then, averaging 12.3, 5.4, and 0.6. The assist number's not really there. But he is getting a steal and a half per game and 0.03 blocks. The defensive activity is definitely higher than I think a lot of people are anticipating. And the shooting from deep's been solid. I kind of want to see guys, especially either if they're not a player that came into college shooting, or if they're just a young player in general. That 36% mark on 10.1 per 100 possessions is good volume. And as he continues to add reps onto that, I mean, just when you're putting him in situations where he needs to make plays, I mean, the kind of the big three for like the synergy, like off ball metrics is, spot ups and then isolations, cutting, kind of wrapping all those together, like off ball, on ball creation. He grades out really well. 1.18 points per shot on spot ups, 1.17 points per shot on isolations, and 1.44 points per shot on cuts. Like, he just gets it done on the offensive end. And I just think a lot of people are underwhelmed by maybe they were expecting more explosion of scoring numbers, like 35-point games, kind of like the Brandon Miller season that we're seeing. But
Mm-hmm.
I think Cam presents a lot of early on returns where a guy like Brandon Miller could have that learning curve, kind of like a Jabari Smith Jr. like we're seeing right now, where I could see a guy like Cam being a part of. There's some of these teams that are going to be up in the high lottery that are going to be really good basketball teams. Like the Pistons may not be good right now, but if they move a couple of pieces around, they can swing things around quick. I believe in Ivy. I believe in some of the things that they're building. I think Whitmore would be a great landing spot for him if they don't take Miller or not in that position. But that's kind of the two guys that I see for me right now that I have at 3 at 4. And I'll like kind of open up the discussion to you, and I'll let you go where you want it with asking, are you a Cam Whitmore guy, or are you a Brandon Miller guy, or who do you got at 3 on your big board? Amen Thompson, Asar Thompson, Jarris Walker.
Personally, I mean, I love all those names you just mentioned. I'm not as high on the Thompson twins as everybody else is, but I still like them. It's just not I'm not just as high
Like
as everybody else, but
like 8 and 9.
exactly. So personally, I would say I'm a Brandon Miller guy, but I do appreciate and love what Cam Whitmore brings to the table because first of all, I remember watching him last summer. He played for Team USA. They went down to Mexico, won gold, and he
Smack.
was just dominant. Yeah, dominant, just
Dude,
everywhere. And he looked like a man amongst boys. And honestly, like the thing that surprised me was when he played his first game at Nova, he just looks bigger, like height wise and physicality. With his strength, like he just looks like he just was in the weight room doing what he was supposed to do. So I love that about him. He's not gonna kill you with the scoring prowess, but in instances when you do need a bucket, you can give him the ball and ask him to make a play, and he's gonna come through for you more often times than not. And that's what I like about his game. And he gonna play defense. He takes pride on that end of the floor. Like I said, strong as I don't know, strong as a bull, contests all shots,
you got a big
always active in the help side. Man, he's a great player, man. You gotta appreciate guys like that because again, Brandon Mills is a hell of a player too. But at the end of the day, like scoring is at a premium, but you also need the guys that are just willing to do the dirty work. And Cam Whitmore, he just cares about winning. I know Villanova's struggling; that's a whole different conversation. But he's doing what he needs to do, and he's still, taking his freshman lumps and different things like that. Of course, every freshman goes through it, but he's making the most of his opportunity, and I think easily, no doubt about it, he's should be easily top 10. Like there's no doubt about that in my mind. Probably closer to 5 than 10.
Yeah, I don't see. I don't know. I think a lot of people. This is a Ben Matherin thing where I think a lot of people overthink it.
Tell me about it.
It'll be like that.
Yeah.
The athletic skills are there, and the skill set. If you apply it to a player that's maybe, got a little bit more basketball experience at a higher level under his belt. I mean, you're talking about the superstar. And I think if he starts, the beginning of the year and is playing the whole season, it probably isn't sitting in as many practices early on there. Because I mean, I'm not a college basketball player, but I'm assuming you get a little less practice time as the season goes on than you do at the beginning of the year. Like I'm sure things clamp down a little bit. School classes heat up. I'm sure teachers and assistant coaches are getting on your back about showing up and all of this stuff. And this guy kids have a lot. Like they're young adults are have a lot on their plate. And I kind of look at it the same way with Derek Whitehead. Like I'm not gonna and Derek Lively too. I'm not gonna jump on these kids' back about not having really fast returns, especially at the college level. I don't care. The things that I want to see are things that you're touching on. He's playing way better defense than I think anybody was anticipating. And I'm glad that you talked about the FIBA stuff because that's where I got hooked. I was thinking about him at like one. Like I was like, if there's a team
Mm.
that needs a wing and isn't, but I mean, obviously the stuff that we've just seen from Wemby it's undeniable. And whatever conversation I want to get into about injury risk or translatability of size and stuff like that, the frame, how's it going to last? I mean, Chet Holmgren couldn't even last a summer league, like a rec league game when he stepped on the court with LeBron. Like, there's conversations to get into, but I think Evan Mobley and Chet and Wembanyama will prove over time whether this whole 7 foot defensive monster and spacers, how that all works out. But I think what is safe and secure is these 6'7" to 6'9" wings that can dribble, pass, and shoot, get to the rack, create their own shot, and then get after it on the other end. And I mean, I have not enjoyed watching a player more than maybe some other guys that are actually on this list, but there's nobody that's off this list that I've enjoyed watching more than Cam Whitmore. He just plays with so much heart. I mean, some of the passing stuff, I think that's probably the biggest gripe. I don't know how much upside he has as a potential pick and roll player, but from what we do see in flashes, the dribble pull up, I mean, he's got it. Like the touch is there. It's not something that you have to doubt. The confidence from three, you can see it. He just plays a lot more confidently. Some of his makes are really clean. He just wasn't getting those in those FIBA games. You know what I mean? A lot of those were rimming in.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of ugly makes, but they're fine makes. You know what I mean? It's not bouncing around. But now he's switching shit. He's pulling up off his one dribble step off the screen. You even are hesitating. There's no hedge. I'm pulling that. No hesitation. And that's the type of stuff you want to see when you get players in situations where they get that confidence. That's what we're seeing from Cam Thomas right now. And you just tell him to pull when he wants to. Good things are gonna happen. I think Cam Whitmore's just one of those guys. When you let him go hoop, he's gonna hoop, and that's what they did in that FIBA, man. The FIBA, they were just like, all right, Cam, what's the game plan, bro? Um, what are your thoughts on, maybe somebody saying that, um, you know, you can't use like a top four pick on a guy who, you know, isn't necessarily consistently producing from a scoring angle night to night, and you're drafting him maybe with the concern of the scoring upside. Like, could this guy be a 22 point per game scorer at some point?
I say don't overthink it. I definitely believe he can. His fluidity isn't necessarily the greatest, but again, that strength is an added bonus. Like I'm a Jimmy Butler fan personally. We all know he's not fluid. He just bullies his way to the rim. I think Cam is more than capable of doing things like that. Like, if he can get that floater down, that'll help him out a lot. Learn how to use his shoulders a little bit more, but you can't overthink it because right now wings are at a premium. You know this, especially in the Eastern Conference. You need guys that you can match up with Jason Tatum, with Cade Cunningham, with LaMelo Ball, with whoever. The list can go on and on and on. You need wings, and wings are the guys that slow down the Lucas, the Anthony Edwards, the Devin Booker. You can't throw a small point guard on them. You can't throw a shooting guard on them. I know we're positionless now, but you need them wings. And Cam Whitmore is built to do that. And so, especially with you mentioned Detroit, which I think I didn't even think about that, but that's a great landing spot because Sadiq Bey, his time is looking like it's up there, and they kind of been lacking that. Like he can shoot the ball, but
He
he's
can
not
also
the
slide
defender that a
down to
lot of
the
people thought
four.
he was going to be.
He can
Mm,
also slide down to the four, and I mean, him next to Stewart is dope. I like that. I think that, I mean, also if they try to swing some of their draft capital around, I mean, they're a team that can get after one of these guys like a Siakam, what I mean, in the offseason, and stuff can happen. You know what I mean? They have real assets. Duran's a monster, but do they really want him? Killian Hayes has been playing better. He's obviously probably a part of their guard future. They maybe have to make some decisions on, you know, is Cade actually him? Like, or could we throw ourselves, somewhere else, pull a little Tyrese Halliburton, Kings action where you're kind of just moving away from a young guard and trying to find better assets. But I don't know. I feel like that's a really bold decision to make. But I mean, it's worked out for the Kings. It's kind of worked out for the Pacers. I don't know if I could see them moving on from Cade like that, but it's an interesting thought. I was having thoughts about that earlier, like early this offseason. I was like, you know, if they move Cade, I mean, this team could look the Pistons could look very different like the next year or so. Just like a lot of teams. I mean, the Thunder getting KD back, like there's a lot of these teams, like there's possibilities for crazy stuff with all these stacking of draft assets. Who knows what the Jazz are gonna do? The Trailblazers are now throwing Shaden Sharp around, so Cam Whitmore could fill a lot of voids for a lot of teams. At that wing position where a lot of players in the league are kind of up for grabs and for futures are uncertain. Um, but speaking of a guy whose future is probably not uncertain, he's probably going to be a lottery pick because of just his sheer ability to shoot the ball. Gradey Dick, has just been probably the symbol of freshman consistency. I think. I don't know. I don't know if there's been a better freshman from night one. I think Brandon Miller had a couple games to adjust. Um, night one, Gradey Dick was ready to play college basketball, and he's just not stopped. I think this is the biggest thing that I want to highlight: the 1.113 points per possession, so efficient. He gets after on the board still too. 4.9 rebounds per game, and then also like this kid can create. Like it's not even like he's just a spot up shooter. 1.3 assist to turnover ratio, but in pick and roll ball handler situations, including passes per synergy, he's creating like a 1.02 shot quality, which I mean, like average shot quality is like 0.85. So he's creating very, very high level shots, easy baskets for his teammates in those situations where he's forced to, kind of create, 89th percentile and spot up, just 89th in general in the pick and roll, including passage. Um, crazy stuff. Crazy stuff for a freshman in terms of efficiency numbers. But I feel like we've been spoiled this year with some of the freshman play, and people maybe aren't talking as much about Gradey Dick. I'll kind of start this conversation the same way that I did with Whitmore. Where do you see him kind of in your lottery, or is he even a lottery guy for you?
I think he's the back end of the lottery. I think he's one of them cases where kind of how you mentioned with Cam Whitmore, I feel like like some scouts and front office personnel in the NBA, they're gonna kind of overthink it and let him slide a little bit. But as you mentioned, the way that he creates is one of my favorite parts about him because he's fundamentally sound when it comes to he uses his jab steps. He loves to use his pump fakes. Like he can break you down off the dribble, but he likes to get defenders on their heels in different ways, and that's a major thing for especially a guy that can shoot the ball like he can. He's had a little slump the past few games, but he did wake up in that game. I just watched it the other day. What was that versus Texas? And he's good, man. That jumper is pure. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't really see it translating coming out of Sunrise Christian as much as it did, but hey, he proved me wrong, and I respect it. Like I
I
can't
didn't
knock it for
either. I didn't think it was gonna be like that either.
exactly. And he's making the most of his opportunity. You know what I'm saying? He's playing for the Kansas Jayhawks. He's starting. They're coming off a national championship. He's coming out the gate. Like you said, from night one, it's been a show. That Duke game, he put on a show. And so that's a player right there, man. You got to give him a lot of credit for what he does because again, even though he's had this little scoring slump the past few games, he was still playing well. I think a lot of people get that kind of confused when the shot isn't falling. They just automatically think like that's a bad game. Like, no, he was still defending, he was still playmaking, he was still in the right spots at the right time. So that's a player that teams are gonna definitely take with a lottery pick, no doubt about it in my mind.
Yeah, I think he looks. I could really see him in a Thunder uniform. I think he'll be like
Hmm.
he could be a Jazz guy. Just I think he's gonna be one of these guys that these teams, maybe the Pelicans. I think the Pelicans could be a team that maybe look to add him. I mean, just the size of the Pelicans' future would be crazy if they have a team that the small ball lineups with like Dyson Daniels,
Whew.
Gradey Dick, Troy Murphy, Zion, and Bi, and then just the crazy stuff that you could throw together. He just provides so much versatility. At 6'8", like he's truly um, kind of has turned into a walking mismatch. I think he gets the white guy label with the no athleticism, but this kid's like, I don't know,
He's
he's good.
bouncy.
He's bouncy. You don't need to really like look for dunks. You just have to look for the way that he elevates and kind of has that hang time and is able to create in the air. Just truly a guy that you can see has worked on his game a lot and is somebody who just likes to hoop. He's the background on my Twitter. He's the banner. He's I can
Yep.
tell that he's probably a fun guy and is a good teammate and seems to have a positive attitude if he's maintained his starting position as a freshman. Not only that, he's playing the most minutes of any guy on these out of these players we're talking about. A freshman for Kansas is playing the most minutes. I thought freshmen aren't like playing that much in college basketball anymore. There's all these upperclassmen that are turning it up. No, he's averaging 32 minutes a contest, getting decent usage. So I've been thoroughly impressed, especially on the defensive end. He holds his own. Um, I don't know. Well, he's an interesting one. I'd be really interested to see where he lands. I think that he's a player that could kind of go anywhere, any team, and have a little bit of success, a good amount of success. I think. Where do you think his ceiling's at long term? The best version of Gradey Dick is sixth man of the year, or you think that he's a contributor on a playoff team, or
I think both of those, honestly. Like he to me, man, I almost said Tyler Hero, but I feel like
that's
he
the way I
creates
was
a little
like,
bit better than Tyler Hero.
that's what
Yeah, I know that can sound a little lazy, but I like Tyler Hero coming out of college, and they're kind of the same. They kind of got that just aggressive scoring mindset. Like even if they're shooting 1 of 13, they're still going to get shots up regardless. And you kind of need that. You kind of need that unflappable type of confidence. A guy that doesn't waver. I think that's my favorite thing about him is that he'll show emotion. Like when he'll make a play, he'll show emotion, but he's always like cool, calm, and collected. You never really see him get too high or too low. He's always just like evenly killed. And I think that's good. Like you have to play like that. You have to have, as coaches say, that next play mentality. And he has that. And so I think that's a big thing that always translates to the NBA levels. Guys are just they know that it's a long game, it's a whole bunch of possessions. You're gonna get up and down, you're gonna miss shots, but you got to take the right ones when they come your way. And he does a good job of doing that. I don't think I've watched Kansas a lot this season. I don't think I've seen him force too many shots like that. And
no, he's
he has
unselfish
every right
as
to.
fuck, bro. Unselfish as fuck. Like
And he has
they
every right.
they move the
He
ball
has
so
every right to take a million shots because Jalen Wilson he gets up shots as you know. And then outside of that, who else is really taking shots for them like that? It is all on his shoulders, and he doesn't force anything like that. So you got to give him a lot of credit for that, man. I really do appreciate and respect his game because again, if I was him personally, I probably would be taking like 13 shots a game. Probably. I don't even know how much he's taking, but he's doing it at a good clip, good volume, and doing it within the offense. Most importantly.
Yeah, I mean, we were kind of talking about Cam Whitmore, and we're like, he's not a prominent shooter, but Cam Whitmore is getting up more threes than him per 100 possessions. Like he's not
Mm,
Gradey Dick has not been a chucker. Um, he's getting up. His average shot quality is 1.01, so a little bit lower than Whitmore's, but he's more of a scorer. His shot making kind of translates higher. He's getting 1.13 points per shot overall. The analytics are there. The eye test is there. He's just one of those guys where, kind of talking about the Whitmore thing, just don't overthink it. Here's a guy that I think a lot of people are going to overthink as well. Jaylen Clark for UCLA. I mean, this just reeks of a sleeper for me. Like I think draft night he's going to be one of those guys that's sitting in the late teens. And a lot of teams I just don't know how they're going to look at themselves in the mirror after they see how this guy plays in 4 or 5 years when he gets with NBA shooting coaches and really just is able to flourish his game. The defensive stuff I think is where we just have to start. 95th
yes.
percentile in isolation defense. Absolute straps. He's averaging 2.5 steals a contest. Not the greatest shot blocker in the world. And I think some people are maybe concerned about that, but I mean, that's just nitpicking number stuff. You know what I mean? Like I'm an analytics guy, but I'm not an analytics guy. You know what I mean? When I look on the tape and I can see the guy can guard 2 through 4 consistently and can get out and switch to every position in one possession, I'm not concerned. Um, and then I'll just let you talk about the defense. I think we have to spend a good amount of time here.
So I'm glad we decided to talk about him because I've actually known. I don't know him. Let me not say I don't know him personally, but I've watched his evolution throughout high school. So he started off playing at Corona Centennial, which is a major powerhouse out there in the Inland Empire. Jared McCain, who's committed to Duke, if you know him,
Dog.
um, he goes there. Yeah. So and they've had other players, Cedric Bearfield, to name a few others, but um, he went there and then he went to Etowanda. David Kleckner, Coach Kleck, hell of a coach. Jordan McLaughlin from the Timberwolves went there. Darren Collison went there alongside others, and both them coaches preach defense. So he has the defensive principles down to a T because all those guys play defense. And the thing I love about him is that first of all, he's like the picture perfect Miami Heat player, in my opinion. Like offense isn't great necessarily, but every single night he's gonna give you 1,000% effort on defense. His hands active, he knows how to move his feet, always is in good position when it comes to trying to take charges, and he's a dog, man. I love dudes like this because again, it's like you need the dudes that understand that it's bigger than just them. It's a team. At the end of the day, basketball is a team game. Everybody got their own roles, and you have to appreciate the dudes that know their roles and know their limitations and know their strong suits. And Jaylen Clark does that. And again, the jumper isn't terrible. It's just not really consistent because honestly, he doesn't really get the looks. UCLA kind of needs him to step into that, him or Amari Bailey as that third, option between Jaime Jaquez and Tiger Campbell. But I feel like you just give him time, you give him reps. He's a guy that when his confidence is high, he can knock down shots. But defensively, man, he's a pest, like
Yeah.
pest, active, and he just gets the job done.
Yeah, I mean, he's got an incredible wingspan, incredible length, great footwork, really high IQ, understands, kind of man ball really well. I just very consistent. And then you look at the rebounding numbers for a 6'5" guard. Hypothetically, he's playing the 2 and 3 when you're bringing him in, and he's averaging 7 rebounds a game, which is awesome. And kind of can eliminate some of those, like, is he really a factor inside? Another thing they want to touch on is when he is getting high quality looks, like you kind of talked about, he's converting at 80.2% high quality effective field goal percentage. Like when he gets his open looks, he's knocking them down. And those are 2s and 3s to get up into that 80% range. You're not making all easy 2s. And then you look at transition. When he gets out in transition, 89th percentile overall, 1.56 points per shot in transition, bro. That's crazy. That's crazy efficiency. And then, there's not only can you just be utilized as a spot up shooter, I think the biggest thing that you were talking about, they need a guy who can also take the ball out of Jaime Jaquez's hands in these weird isolation sets and kind of run more conventional offense, pick and roll sets where, get Hamid the ball in the short roll where he has maybe a switch and a mismatch or something like that more often. Also, when Jaylen Clark gets downhill at the beginning of the year, he was shooting like 70% inside the arc or inside the paint. You know what I mean? Like, that's crazy. And he's still at the 78th percentile in pick and roll ball handler, including passes. Like, he's just been a dog, absolute baller. One of my big guys that I'm just grading is a sleeper, like absolute sleeper in this class. So I don't know.
Can I just say don't overthink it, man. Don't overthink that one.
In the early 20s, like 21.
20. I like that.
Above names like Derek Whitehead. He's in the same breath as other guys like I'm just gonna pull it. I might as well. He's just
I just want to say real quickly too, he's gonna be one of them dudes that when them pre-draft scrimmages happen, he's gonna be one of them dudes that are clamping up some of your favorite prospects. I'm gonna just say that right now.
I have him at 20 right now. Right, one spot behind Terquavion Smith. The two people that are behind him would be it's Derek Lively. I got at 21, and at 22 I got Bryce Sensabaugh. So he's right in there. He's kind of breaking up some freshman talent towards the top, and he's kind of in the middle of the upperclassmen, guys like Max Lewis. All right, that wraps up the Jaylen Clark conversation. All right, moving on from the Jaylen Clark conversation, we got, honestly, in my opinion, the biggest surprise in the entire country in terms of just like, you want to talk about analytics, like pure just efficiency stats in basketball. There's no player probably in the country having a better season than D'Moi Hodge for Missouri. 6'4" senior guard. Just kind of the counting stats I'll give you: 14 points per game, 3.8 rebounds, 1.8 assists, 2.4 steals, and a half a block a game. Get into more of the advanced metrics. Crazy efficiency with 1.151 points per possession, and then a 2.63 assist to turnover rate. 14 attempts per 100 from three, and shooting at 38.1%. 90th in spot up, 85th in transition, 1.33 points per shot in transition. One of the best isolation defenders in the country, only allowing a 0.72 shot quality allowed, compared to Cam Whitmore, who's allowing, 0.71. So he's like in the same breath as, just some of the best physical athletes in the country. And then, is just straight up one of the best defenders. D'Moi Hodge is a dog, and he's an absolute sniper. So it's when you combine those two things, it almost makes him seem like it's the perfect storm for a 3-and-D prospect. Obviously, the elephant in the room is the age. We're talking about a graduate player here, a fifth-year graduate senior. So kind of his long-term, upside, but we have not seen teams shy away from a player like this in the past with a guy like Chris Duarte, and other players of that nature, Derek White, a lot of guys who have, unorthodox paths to the league that kind of fit this, a 3-and-D guard role. Then they tend to kind of turn out pretty well. So I think that history will, a lot of people will have the bias against some of these older players, but in my opinion, I think D'Moi Hodge is one of these guys that people have to look out for, because I think he's going to be a player that's around on our televisions for a bit longer than just the rest of the season here for Missouri. What are your kind of thoughts on Hodge?
You said dog, sniper, high basketball IQ, been there, done that, been through the ringer of college basketball. Going from a level like, let's be honest, I say this all the time with all due respect, like Cleveland State is one of the worst D1 programs out. And to go from Cleveland State to Missouri.
I watched Bay. I watched Horizon, bro. They're everybody in that conference is trash.
It's just it's not I'll just say it's not the greatest brand of basketball. So with that though, going from there to Mizzou and kind of making it look like a seamless fit says a lot about his character and the type of player that he is. And age to me, it matters. I don't want to sit here and act like it doesn't matter, but I think over the recent past couple of drafts, we've seen that the older guys kind of have had more more of a seamless fit, unless you're just naturally talented, like a Cade or whatever. But like the older guys, they tend to have a pretty smooth transition going from college basketball to the NBA. Now, obviously, it still is a big gap between the two levels, regardless of who you are. But some dudes just make it work faster than others, and I think that's a big time thing for him. And Hodge, he just got game. You can
Yeah.
run him off pin downs. You can run him anywhere you need him to be to make a play. He's capable of doing it. He can get to his spots whenever he wants to. He's more than capable of doing it. And you could tell he's been playing this game for a long time. He enjoys to do
Stop
it. He
and
plays
pop.
with a
Oh,
high level of confidence. That one dribble pull up is nasty. He just got game, man. And you can't really say too much more about him, but he just knows how to get to his spots. He's really good at picking and choosing his spots, man. And just again, another guy that just knows how to play within the flow of the offense. You never see him get too selfish. And he just maximizes opportunities, man. I respect him for making that transition and following Coach Gates to Missouri. And look at him now, he's shining.
yeah. I mean, it's really crazy to see how some of these transfers, like the guys I talked about at the beginning of the year, I called it the slew of transfers for Missouri from some of these mid-major programs that are stealing, offensive and defensive like they were stealing a lot of really, really high quality analytic basketball players from decent programs like Cleveland, maybe not the best brand of basketball, but can recruit and find good talent, no doubt. But getting a guy like Hodge to come in and where a player like Isaiah Mosley has not really kind of turned out the way that they may be hoping, or myself was hoping kind of this year, and being more of a driving force for their offense. Hodge and Kobe Brown have just been a phenomenal pairing. And probably one of the most uber consistent, scoring with efficiency duos in the country. And Missouri's going to be a team around tournament time because all these vets and the coaching that I just have my eye on, and I wouldn't be surprised if talking about them, towards the Sweet 16, because they're able to pull off a couple early round upsets over teams that maybe aren't as experienced. And just don't have the level of like consistency that this team seems to play with sometimes, shooting the ball from deep. I mean, they've gone on stretches this year where it just seems like they're untouchable, especially early on in the year.
And again, you mentioned the coach, and that's a big part of it. But again, with all them vets, man, when you're playing so many different, first of all, they all come from different places for the most part. They've all seen all different types of play styles. They've got a couple of ACC transfers from all over, and Moy just he knows his role, doesn't do too much. He lets Kobe Brown shine when he needs to shine. When it's his turn to shine, he does it. When Nick Honor got it going, he lets him go. They play a really good brand of basketball, and that's what you want, man. You want guys that know how to fit within the team structure. It's a lot of guys that are high level bucket getters, and you got to respect that. But also, that's all they know. And so when the ball is not in their hands, they're nothing. They don't know what to do. It's like they're running around with their head chopped off. So Moy doesn't have that problem because he knows even if he doesn't get the ball, his gravity. I know we love to use that word in the draft world, but his gravity is real and it's a real effect, and he knows how to just space the floor out. When he's on the floor, even when it's not in his hands, his defender has to play him honest. And so you have to take that into account when you're looking at him and wanting to invest millions into him.
I have them really second round.
I like that.
I feel like I'm pretty bold about that. Like I feel like I'm probably in a minority. At least in like the casual draft space. I think actual hoop heads know his game and know where he belongs. Kind of he definitely belongs in that like 45 to 60 conversation. But for me, I look at I just think he's the perfect NBA role player, and when you can get him, you have to take him. And I would not let this guy slip to another team. And if I'm a team walking in there with an early second selection in the second round, and it's my second pick and my last pick, and I can take Hodge, I'm not letting the other team get to him. I think it's the same thing that the Pelicans have been doing, the Thunder have been doing. They're taking guys that they just don't want other teams to get. You know what I mean? We've seen the Nets do it in the past. They kind of like have how some of these teams house the Warriors do the same thing. They just house these prospects because they don't want any other team to have them. This is a guy that he's going to be a contributor. I kind of think about it as if Duncan Robinson can be a player that impacts the NBA Finals run. I think Hodge can, come, be the eighth man off your bench and at least contribute to a playoff run, year one or two. I just think he's that type of player, that type of veteran experience. You touched a lot on the IQ. the 2.63 assist to turnover ratio speaks for itself. This guy is not making mistakes, not making any mistakes, and plays a very aggressive brand of basketball. So, been super enjoyable. I just remember watching him kind of early in the year, just when he was just, you could just tell he had a different level of confidence since he got moved up to the SEC. You can tell that it kind of, it let him know and kind of confirmed a lot of things that he probably thought about his own game, especially the shooting, just the leaps that he made in terms of just the shot making ability. Crazy hooper.
Man, like that. That's all I can say about him. He's just like that. I love it. I love everything about his game.
We have to give him his flowers because I just don't feel like he's a name that's going to get talked about enough. But I think he'll get talked about in the rooms where it happens, bro. He will.
Yeah.
Um,
And I like that you said early second round pick. I think is perfect. I think that's exactly where he ends up going to.
Yeah. No Clowney, another name that is probably going to be talked about in the room where it happens. Maybe not. Outside in the space, everybody's kind of focused on Brandon Miller right now, but Clowney had his 15 minutes of fame for a bit there. Kind of just going over the broad numbers. For a freshman, a 6.5 box plus minus, kind of pops right away. And then he's averaging, 10 and 8.4, with one steal and one block, half a steal. Can shoot a little bit from deep, 7.1 attempts per 100 possessions, that 20 for 74, 27%. Not the best. Kind of concerned about the free throw percentage at 61.3, but he's showing some ability to stretch the floor. I just think this is mostly an upside swing. So I think, I try to put on my my rose-colored glasses and I look at him. I say the best version of this guy is probably, every team's backup center in 5 years. Is a 6'10" to 6'11" dude. He can block shots, run around a little bit, good athlete, and then can shoot it, and has upside to shoot it from 3. So I don't know.
Another dude that, you're saying center. I could see him, honestly. I know his handle's not the greatest right now, but I could see him playing the 3 down the line. I think he's the perfect 4. And you could play him in small ball lineups. You can play him in big lineups. He's just a dude that, as you mentioned, all 30 NBA teams would love to have on their roster because he's going to bring some type of value, whether it's defensively, rebounding, being able to knock down shots, being in the right spots.
Gives
coming
me
out of South Carolina.
Vibes. Nick Claxton vibes.
Exactly. And I heard about him a little bit coming out of high school, but I had no idea that he was going to be like this. And he went to the perfect situation for that Alabama team because they don't even need him to be great. But what he does is great. It's not Brandon Miller where he's going to get all the love, as you mentioned, but he does things, again, like we've talked about all these guys, that contributes to winning basketball. And that's an important quality that I look for personally.
I'm right there with
you. Exactly. Noah Clowney, man, he's one of my favorite prospects in this class. I don't know. I'm curious to see how other, NBA front offices view him, but I think he's one of them dudes where it's they're gonna look back and be like, oh yeah, this dude should have definitely been drafted way higher than wherever he ends up going, just because of the value, man. He literally does everything. Again, the handle isn't the greatest, but oh well. And even then, I still think he can develop that. But he's just so lanky that it's he don't even really need a killer handle. He just has to learn how to just beat his dude off the jump a little bit from here and there.
I feel like when I'm trying to read GMs, I feel like I'm sitting at the poker table with my buddies. You know what I mean? I'm trying to read the people's hands, and I feel like whatever type of play NBA teams make on Noah Clowney is going to reflect a lot about how teams view bigs going forward. I think whether he goes off the board before a guy that maybe we talk about in a second goes off the board, or even a guy like Deron Holmes, Kalel Ware, wherever we're at on these conversations, I think will be very telling to me about kind of where the game's going and where people are anticipating, kind of the big things happening. I think he could be a guy that I really want to see him go back to school, low key. I think if he went, I think if him and Bradley went back. I think if him and Bradley went back and both of them have the chance to get up more shots, Clowney has a chance to actually show off the jumper a little bit more, get more pick and pop reps. It's sure to solidify a lot of these things. He is only averaging 25 minutes a game. And part of when I was doing the prep work for this today, I was thinking to myself, I was like, I wonder if Alabama does want him to stay. and that's why he's only playing 25 minutes a game.
And can I say this real quickly? Because I really want to get this off my chest. Is that I know a lot of draft Twitter loves to knock dudes for going back to school, but it's nothing wrong with that. And it's nothing wrong with taking your time and developing. And Jordan Walsh, I kind of feel like is in the same category that if he comes back, he could just skyrocket. You know, kind of like Benedict Mathurin and Jaden Ivey and who else? There's plenty of other options out there for you. But
Oh my
if
gosh.
he comes back to school, man, I would personally love that because it's again like he's already so good and he already does so many different things well. But if he just comes back to school, he can amplify everything else
I
and
mean,
just
he's the Trevon
craft growth.
Brazil. I mean, he's the Trevon Brazil of what we were looking at early on this year. Um,
Exactly.
Brazil's another guy I really want to see what decision he makes because I really want him to go because I think that he showed in the first couple weeks of the season there that when he put in the work in the offseason on that shooting, he act like he can shoot it. And I think Clowney could be a guy that makes that type of jump very similar to Brazil, presents a lot of the similar skill set and qualities. Um, I would, I'm just hyped. You know, I think that this is going to be a guy who, if he doesn't get picked this year, and decides to, you know, put his name back, and try again next year, I I see a top 10. I'd see a top 15 pick here. Like I think this will be a guy
Easily.
that's in top 15 pick conversation as a sophomore. Um,
Easily.
and he think he'll be a guy that slips up into first round conversation by the end of the year if he's not there already. I don't know where are you kind of at? If you're
For
taking,
this year,
where do you view him? I see him like 40s.
honestly, I think he can go first round. I'm not gonna lie. Just because like me personally, as I mentioned, he just does so many things well. Like if I'm a coach, I want Nae'Qwan on my
Rebounding's been
team.
awesome. The rebounding's been awesome.
Exactly. So I do agree with you though. Again, I would love the college basketball fan of me, and just being a fan of his personally, would love for me to see him come back another year and just run with that because you can go from whatever as you're saying, it could be early second round pick, could be late first round pick, we don't know, could be middle of the first round, whatever. But if he just comes back next year, I think he's guaranteed lottery,
Yeah.
like guaranteed lottery.
Speaking of a guy who's kind of taken their own path and has had a really interesting development arc, um, Nae'Qwan Tomlin has had a really same path, kind of where we're sitting at with Kansas State. Like there, if I'm not mistaken, is JUCO transfer, correct?
Yep.
Yeah, and
Yep.
I wanted to make sure I was getting it right. JUCO transfer comes in, junior year of eligibility. And he's kind of put on a show here for a Kansas State team that looks like awesome. And kind of the
Yep.
things that I want to throw it out into the ether here. Is this a guy that's benefiting from playing with two really, really good college basketball players? Like I think Noel and Johnson are both exceptionally good college basketball players. Like the tiny point guard, like straight out of the Michigan playbook, like of the kind of the style of basketball they're playing, getting up and down, letting these wings and kind of these big forwards create and create mismatches in space and stuff like that. Like it's just good basketball, and I'm curious, because his 98th percentile is a roll and pop and pick and roll. He's benefiting a lot from playing with some of these really good players. So kind of where I want to start the conversation is, where do you see his value at right now as a college player? Like, do you think he's truly like, this is a guy that is going to help carry your team to a national championship? Or do you think he's kind of benefiting from, kind of the ancillary pieces that are around him? Or do you think he's somebody that's a legitimate NBA draft prospect who is like sprouting up and this is just another one of those JUCO success stories?
Honestly, this might sound like a cop out, but I think it's kind of like all those combined.
Fair enough. Here
If
for
I'm
it.
just being honest,
For it.
like
Here for it.
first of all, shout out to all the JUCO dogs. That's a real grind to come up from that level because Jimmy Butler said it. It's a dog eat dog world down there. Everybody's trying to get to that next level. Everybody's trying to get their shots and different things like that. But for me, just watching him again, he's barely started playing basketball. He hasn't been playing basketball that long. Shout out to my guy Jaquan. Does great job covering tri-state area hoops. He said he didn't play a single minute of high school basketball. He just went to JUCO just because, and he went to the right JUCO, a big time JUCO down in Florida, and maximize his opportunity. Shout out to Jerome Tank for finding him and seeing him. And he's in the perfect role because, as you mentioned, Marquise Noel, hell of a player. He's been put on a show all year. Keontae Johnson, I'm so glad. One of the best comeback stories I've ever seen in my lifetime, you know? And on top of that, like Nae'Qwan, he's a real prospect to me, man. He had a move, you probably seen it, but he had a move where he just crossed over Dylan Mitchell in that Texas game. And I was like, is that a 6'10" dude moving like that? Especially on Dylan Mitchell, because if Dylan Mitchell can do nothing, he can for damn sure play defense, right? And he broke him down like it was nothing. And I'm like, this dude barely just started playing basketball. That should be scary. If you're a team that's like late first round, early second round, why not take a chance on Nae'Qwan Tomlin, man? Like he can shoot it, he can pass it, he can dribble it. And again, he's barely just started hooping. He's all this is new to him. And for him to come in, and as you mentioned, like again, you do benefit playing with those two guys that you mentioned, but also if like it's hard to adjust to that. You know, you can't just walk in and play with great players. It's not easy like that. It doesn't just happen like that. But again, that's credit to the coaching staff at Kansas State too. But he's making the most of his opportunities, and I love watching him play, man. Because again, you can see in certain instances that he is still kind of new to
Learning
this.
on the go. He's learning on the go.
Exactly, but he's picking it up fast, man. You got to give him so much credit for that. I love watching him play. He's been enjoying that entire team, but specifically him too. He got game.
Yeah.
He has a lot of game, man. So that's an interesting prospect that I'm very curious to see not only how he does in the pre-draft process, but especially just once he gets to the NBA. 'Cause I think he's a guy that can stick for a long time.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with everything you said. I kind of wanted to phrase the question in that way, so I kind of hoped you touched on all the pieces, which you did, which was great. I think the one thing that I will raise, though, the shooting obviously on low attempts from three, 12 for 50, but 75% from the line. So we can kind of use that, old age. He can shoot free throws, so he's gonna be able to shoot threes type of shtick. But I mean, it is the truth. When you have that consistent form and it is a good shot and an indicator of shooting touch. So I'm confident, and we've seen him do different things around the basket that are just absolutely crazy. In terms of his dexterity, his balance, kind of moving side to side for a guy who's 6'10" is awesome. Got a lot of like lateral agility going both ways. And this guy can actually step out on the perimeter and defend a little bit. He can be a switchable defender. I have, he's the shot quality allowed normally for a big man when they're switching out on these pick and roll ball handler possessions. One, he has enough reps where synergy actually can track stats for him, which shows you that he's getting out there and actually trying to do that. And he's only allowing a 0.85 about average shot quality when switching out on these guards, which means he's playing these guards just as good as a guard would when he's getting switched out and these pick and roll possessions. That's legit. That's legit. And when I saw that, I was like, he's a legit prospect. For a while there, I was like, I get it. It's really cool to see kind of how fast he's picking up some of the game. You can tell he has a lot of just natural feel, and some of the physical gifts are just undeniable. I was trying to nitpick a lot of the physicality stuff. Like, he's not the greatest rebounder. Really wish they could be a better shot blocker. But then when I start looking at him as like a 3-4, I'm like, if he can really put that shot together, you're talking about a guy, like you said, that not a lot of teams in the league are want to pass up on. If we're taking Gigi Jackson, 7th, we're for damn sure taking Nae'Qwan Tomlin, top 40, and giving him first round looks. That's for sure. And I mean, if people are even going to still consider Baba Miller a guy for this year, at any point, then they have to be putting Nae'Qwan Tomlin in that conversation before they even get down to Baba Miller's name. So I don't know. I've been loving what he's been putting together. I really wanted to talk to the amateur NBA analyst about him. He was one of those guys that I wanted to talk to, along with like Max Lewis, because I know he's huge on them. Him and Brian J NBA, shout out to them. But just another one of those guys that the 6'10", rangy, big forward, kind of prospect that's scary when you look at where the game's going. Kind of can do a little bit of everything. Speaking of, kind of can do a little bit of everything. For your Spartans, Jaden Akins, kind of the glue guy of your guys' guard play, as I'd kind of describe him. He's the driving force. And I think when you have a guy who's such an effort player, you can disregard some of the standard like statistical barriers that you want to place up in front of him. Like, not the most efficient shooter, but is still shooting 42% from three on lower attempts. Maybe not the greatest finisher around the basket, but he's still, 95th percentile in the catch and shoot. And that includes like the ability to get forcing people to close out on you. So the opportunities you get around the rim are only going to get easier. There's a lot of things on the offensive side of the ball where maybe I was nitpicking earlier in the year. And there's more that I've watched of Jaden Akins as he's gotten back and he's getting his legs back under him. I love his game, bro. And we talked about it when we spoke last. The Max Christie vibes are there. There's the dog on defense, and the defense mentality is an Izzo guy. And just when these Izzo guys and they can play defense and they have the size at 6'4", they get minutes. Max Christie's not playing in the G League, bro. He's on the NBA bench for a reason. They're not sending him down for a reason because they know that if they have to on any given night, they can talk Max Christie out there and they want to give him time. I'm not convinced Jaden Akins is that much worse of a player than Max Christie, and I could probably be convinced that he has higher potential than Max Christie. I think he's a little bit better athlete. I think he's got a little bit more agility. And, the 4.3 box plus minus, bro, isn't even bad. He's got a higher box plus minus than Whitmore, and he's played 4 more games. I mean, but that's solid for a guy who's maybe not looking at like as, a barn burner top 30 draft pick, but he's one of these late round guards that he's up there in my conversation. Before I start going down to those mid-major guys like the Amari Moores and other guys in that conversation, I have to give a look to these guys like Judah Mintz and Jaden Akins. Just those two specifically, where it's just when you watch them play, it's just such an eye test thing. And then when he's showing up 90th percentile in overall defense, I'm like, hey, I'm good. I'm good with it. The floor is yours. I felt like I had to talk because you're just gonna gush about your guy.
Nah, it's funny because being a Michigan State fan, I always pay attention to what's going on from the high school level in the state of Michigan. Cause I feel like Michigan always has produced some of the most underrated basketball talent from Magic Johnson, Chris Webber, Jalen Rose. The list goes on, right? And with Jaden, this was a dude on the EYBL. I knew he was a player. I just knew I could see it from the jump that he had game, and I was so glad that he committed to us. And the craziest thing about it is that it kind of sucks because with us getting back Joey Hauser and getting Tyson Walker, that kind of took away shots from him. And I really wanted to see him get those shots this year. But nonetheless, though, he still maximizes opportunity. Honestly, I think coming back one more year, just like we mentioned with Noah Clowney and Jordan Walsh, would help him out tremendously because next year it'll be his show. And I would love for Izzo to kind of give him some reps at the point guard spot a little bit more because I think he can play make. But as you said, dog. He is, as a freshman, to me, he was one of the better guards in the Big Ten guarding Jaden Ivey and Johnny Davis. Like, he did a great job of doing that. And Izzo doesn't just put anybody on those big time players like that. And to get that type of responsibility and task as a freshman says a lot about the type of game that he has. And his jumper is there. I personally, as I mentioned, I would love to see him get to the rack a little bit more because the athleticism is there. He's had some big time dunks this season. He had a game winning dunk, or game sealing dunk, shall I say, last night versus Maryland. Like, he can get there. He just doesn't do it as much, which kind of bothers me sometimes. But the jumper's there. I have no worries about that. His mid range jumper is lacking a little bit, but I think it's only because he doesn't shoot it enough. But I think once he gets more reps, it's going to go down.
He's not getting
all in all,
touches like that. He's just not been getting pick and roll touches like that.
And it irks me because I can honestly make the case that he could be our most talented player on this team.
Play Sissoko more.
And it's just like, man, so I get mad at Izzo, but I can't get too mad because he's Tom Izzo. But with Jaden, man,
like, get mad at him because you guys need to play Sissoko more. You guys need to get more pick and roll touches. At the beginning of the year, you guys were torching on the pick and roll, and it just seems like you guys moved away from a lot of the sets where, now it's just like we know Hauser can score in so many different ways, so we're just gonna settle for whatever look we can get with him sometimes. And I just feel like they need to make him the like. How the Iowa utilizes the Murray twins the last two years. They've utilized them in a way that, yes, it's our focal point of our offense, but we're going to use those as post touches once in a while. Otherwise, we'll just use them as a spot up shooter on every possession. You know what I mean? I just feel like you guys need to do more of that. And that would set up Akins to get some of those touches, set up Sissoko to get more score around the basket. I feel like Hogard would benefit, you know. I don't know. That was
No,
my spiel, bro.
you're preaching to the choir. Trust me. I'm watching the same thing and it's driving me crazy because as you mentioned, it gave us so much success, and I just think like Jaden has it. And Izzo knows Jaden has it. Izzo was preaching about Jaden more than anybody this offseason. And so it's like, bro, give him his reps. And so I'm
Like the
hoping
Calipari thing with Aduthiero. It's so irritating to hear them talk. I'll hear these coaches talk out the side of their mouth sometimes, bro.
and Jaden just has it, man. I like no bias. He can just play. Like in any role you want to give him, he can play. You can put him on the ball, he can maximize opportunity. You can put him off the ball at that off guard spot, he can knock down shots. Whatever you want out of Jaden Akins, he's the type of coach that's not gonna complain and just be like, I'm gonna go get the job done, coach.
I would take him just for the defense. I think he's got great size, and that translates. Him and Judah Mintz are the two guard prospects that I think I'm very, very uncertain on. Where I kind of feel the same way where I felt about like, you know, Jaden Hardy last year. And where I'm like, you know, they have this really prominent skill set that could really be tapped into by an NBA team and organization if he gets the right situation. You know what I mean? Gets the G League reps. I think this is a guy that flourishes when you give him more opportunity. I don't think he's going to be a guy that shrivels at that type of stage. Great player. I hope your guys' season just continues to do better than, you know, ours. Wisconsin's just like literally the inconsistent team in the country. So, I mean, I can count on us to score 55 a night. That's about it.
I hope y'all win tonight, man. I think y'all playing right now, aren't y'all? Penn State, I think.
Yeah, it should be on now. It should be probably at least getting a little bit of the way through. You know, Chucky versus Pickett. I feel like that's a really interesting matchup. Yeah. All right, moving on. This is kind of my favorite player in the entire country. Jalen Slawson for Furman. The senior, I mean, just the master class he's been putting on this year. I'm just gonna go through the numbers. For a 6'7" forward, the usage of 24. First off, that's crazy. If you're utilizing a forward who's not a ball handler, like not a pick and roll initiator, and yet his usage is 24, that means this guy is a good basketball player and teams want the ball in his hands. That's what Furman wants. They either want the ball in his hands or Bothwell. 8.3 box plus minus, 15.6 points per game. The most on this list out of all these players, Cam Whitmore, Jaylen Clark, Hodge, Gradey Dick, all these players. Jalen Slawson, number one scoring. 1.086 points per possession, crazy efficient. 7.2 rebounds, second highest on here besides Clowney. He's got the most assists per game on this entire list of players that we're talking about. 3.5 a game with an assist to turnover ratio of 1.38. 3.2 steals and blocks per game combined, bro. 3.2, 1.8 steals, 1.4 blocks. Just simply probably one of the best defenders in the country, one of the best athletes in the country, in my opinion. Three balls not even a problem. He's shooting it better than Whitmore at 37.1% on 70 attempts. 5 attempts per 100 possessions. 1.12 shot quality, 1.22 points per shot. So, like, he's getting easy looks, but he's also converting them at a super consistent rate. Matches, Jaylen Clark's high quality effective field goal percentage at 80.2, 92nd percentile on offense, 0.66 shot quality allowed on ISO. I mean, we're talking about, Hodge at 0.72 and Whitmore at 0.71. That's what a real elite stat looks like. 0.66. 91st percentile on handoffs on offense, 1.55 points per shots on those possessions. All those little dribble handoffs that they're doing, that's NBA offense, bro. 1.11 points per possession isolation. I thought this guy wasn't a creator. I thought he wasn't a creator. How is he scoring 1.11 points per shot in isolation? 1.50 points per shot in transition. 1.16 points per shot in spot up, bro. I thought this guy was not supposed to be an offensive player, yet he is playing better than your favorite player in the country on offense while still giving the beans on defense every single night, bro. I don't know. I just feel like this resume is just one of these absolute flawless seasons that I've seen from a mid-major player, especially. I'm not going to lie. He's in my top 25.
I'm not even mad at that. And honestly, like you said everything. I don't even know where to go with that because I agree
I've
with
been
you.
waiting for this one, Kev. I've been waiting for this one. Like,
Yeah, Jalen Slawson, man, just uber talented, super skilled, jumper so pure, gets to it. He can post you up. He can take you out to the wing and get to it. Like you said, with the dribble handoffs, excellent reads and pick and roll. Like whatever, just so crafty and intelligent. Like he always knows where the defense is gonna be at, knows the rotations. It feels like he's a point guard almost, and he's just a high quality bucket getter though at the same time. So Furman's a great mid major program, and
one of the
he's
most
taking his
underrated in the country,
opportunity.
in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure, 100%. And he's just taking his opportunity and running with it and maximizing it and taking it to the fullest extent. So he's a joy to watch. Actually coincidentally I watched him play against Penn State early in the year, and
That
he
was
was just
a good game. Though at the end of the game, just those like his ability to read the defense and sling one-handed passes from any position on the floor, just as long as he's posting up, he can get that pass off. And it just backdoor cuts. He's hitting you. The ball is always out in a timely manner. I don't know. I just want to look up and see how bad they beat VMI tonight. I saw they were just absolutely beating the doors off of them. Yeah, 94-63 tonight. Slawson had 11 points. I'm assuming they didn't play him that much because, I mean, that was an absolute smashing of them. But, I mean, I don't know. I think that this is what my podcast series has really been all about is just these players like this, like just the most elite, like end of the draft prospects. So, yeah. I think that's where we'll wrap it up. Do you have anything you want to plug before I have to get kicked out of this room?
nah, you good, man. I appreciate you for having me again. I got the Kevoo Bandzz Who's podcast
Yep.
at
So
Easy Money Kev 7 as you mentioned.
links
Yep.
all
At, yep. And get a bucket podcast I do for Off the Ball Network where we just talk about everything college basketball too. And again, man, I appreciate you for having me. Got to do it more often for sure.
Absolutely. It's gonna be your guys' turn to have me on at some point here soon. So
Yes, sir, for
I
sure.
appreciate the time, of course, and we'll stay in touch there, Kevin. I hope you guys have a great rest of your night. We're off the clock.